My name is Alina. I'm 36, married for 4 years to a good, stable, caring man named Julian. He had 2 children from a previous marriage, so did I. Our union felt like a second chance for both of us. Not passionate, but calm, comforting. We had a mutual agreement. No children together. Too many responsibilities already. Too many routines to rebuild. And he once told me calmly, I had a vasectomy. I can't have children anymore. I didn't insist. It suited me. We lived in a nice house on the outskirts of town. The kids got along well. Weekends were barbecues. Evenings were TV shows. A simple routine, but reassuring. I worked at a medical office. Julian was a telecom engineer. We lacked nothing, except perhaps that spark, that fire, that thrill. One day, a new colleague arrived. Lyon, mid-40s, piercing eyes, deep voice, and a charm that made my heart beat a little faster. At first, I avoided him, but he knew how to talk, how to listen, and most of all, how to seduce. The messages started off innocent. Then came the looks. Then excuses to stay late at the office. I didn't see it coming, yet I fell. I fell into his arms, into his bed, into his world. And I thought I was in control until the day I threw up at work. I thought of everything except that. Stress, fatigue, maybe a stomach bug. That's what I told myself. But the days went by, the nausea returned, and my period never came. I stopped by the pharmacy, not really thinking, just to reassure myself. That evening, secretly, I took the test in the bathroom. 2 lines. Positive. I sat there frozen, unable to breathe. I checked the box, the instructions, everything. Then I took another test. Same result. I sat on the cold tile floor, hands shaking. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a miracle either. It was a disaster. Julian couldn't have children. He had told me, clearly, without hesitation. So this baby could only be Lyon's. I couldn't get an abortion, not like that, not without thinking. But I was paralyzed. And every night, when Julian wrapped his arms around me, a knot twisted in my gut. Then one night, I broke down. I told him I was pregnant. He looked at me, smiled gently. That's not possible, Alina. What? I had a vasectomy 6 years ago. You know that. And then, his smile disappeared. His face went cold, rigid, and my world came crashing down. He didn't yell. He didn't insult me. He didn't even raise his voice. Julian just stood up from the couch, walked upstairs to our bedroom, and closed the door. The next morning, he didn't say a word. He dropped the kids off at school, came back to grab a few things, and said, I'm staying elsewhere. I need time to think. He didn't need to say more. He knew. I stayed alone, in a house that suddenly felt too big, too empty. Every room reminded me of his absence and my guilt. I didn't call Lyon. I couldn't even say his name. I had no appetite, no sleep, just shame. The kids started asking questions. Where's Julian? Why are you crying? I answered the best I could, but their stares burned me. I hoped he'd come back, that he'd forgive me, that we could forget, but he didn't come back. And with each passing day, his silence crushed me. I finally called him, once, twice. He didn't answer. Then one day he picked up. I've made an appointment with a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. You destroyed what we had, Alina. And he hung up. I just sat there, phone in hand, staring into the void. I didn't know what to do, what to say, who to talk to. Lyon kept sending messages. Are you okay? Can we talk? But I didn't answer. I had started this, but I needed silence. I needed to understand how I could have, how I dared, destroy everything for a few moments of illusion. Julian eventually came back home, but only to grab his papers, clothes, his things. He didn't look at me, and in front of the kids, he just said, Dad needs some time. You'll stay with Mom for now. I saw in his eyes a deep pain, not anger, but immense disappointment, a void I had never seen in him. That night, I made a decision. I called Lyon. I told him it was over, that I wanted nothing more from him, that I might be carrying his child, but he wouldn't be part of our life. He didn't insist. He just said, I figured. Good luck, Alina. And he hung up. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was no longer the same. My reflection scared me. I was carrying life, but had destroyed my own. Weeks passed, and my belly started to show. At work, my coworkers whispered. I felt the curious, judgmental stares. No one said anything to my face, but the silence was heavy. Conversations stopped when I walked in. Smiles felt forced. I pretended. I came, worked, left. And at home, the void waited for me. Julian had taken everything, even the photos, as if he wanted to erase our life. One day, the director called me in. She spoke about the pregnancy with a neutral, cold tone. "Congratulations, Alina. But you understand, given your situation, adjustments will have to be made." I knew what that meant. They'd move me aside, push me out. Quietly, I smiled politely, nodded. I didn't have the strength to fight. I just wanted to carry this pregnancy to term, to stay upright until the end. The kids grew quieter. They felt everything, without fully understanding. And me? I was just an empty shell, a tired, guilty mother. I cried often, alone at night, hand on my belly. I spoke to the baby I hadn't planned, but couldn't hate. He was innocent. I was the only one who carried the blame. Months went by, slowly, painfully. I lived in slow motion. Doctor's appointments alone. No hand to hold. No reassuring voice. Julian never asked for news. Not a message, not a word. Not even to ask if I was okay. Still, I loved him. On the day of the birth, I took a taxi. I clenched my teeth and gave birth to a little girl. Alone, in a white room. No pictures, no visitors, no flowers. She was beautiful. Her eyes looked at me with trust. Yet, I felt like the worst mother. I named her Emma. A soft name. A name with no connection to Julian or Lyon. I stayed 3 days in the hospital. I hoped, foolishly, he might come. Out of curiosity or nostalgia. But no one came through that door. On the 4th day, I came home with Emma. Still alone. The house was silent. But her cries broke that silence. And I cried with her. I love this child. But she reminded me, every second, of my betrayal. She was born from a mistake. But she deserved love, peace, warmth. So I made a decision. I had to rebuild myself. For her. Even though I had lost everything, I no longer had the right to fall apart. The nights were short, dark circles deep, but every smile from Emma helped me hold on. She was my rock, my anchor, my living forgiveness. I fought to keep my job. I accepted a lesser position, less visible, but I held my head high. Gradually, co-workers stopped whispering. Some even started talking to me again. Cautiously, maybe out of pity, but it was something. I became a present mother again to my 2 older kids. I walked them to school, cooked for them, and silently asked for forgiveness with every look. Julian had become a shadow. He lived elsewhere, never returned. He paid his share for the kids, but not a word, not a glance. One evening, I wanted to send him a picture of Emma, just so he could see, just so he'd know, but I erased the message before sending it. I no longer wanted to force anything. He had loved me, trusted me, and I had betrayed him. I didn't deserve his forgiveness, but each day, I woke up trying to become someone my daughter wouldn't end up judging, too. Sometimes, at night, I sat at my desk and wrote to Julian, long, trembling letters, full of regret, truth, and memories. I told him about Emma, her smiles, her tantrums, her tiny hand reaching for mine. I told him I wasn't asking for forgiveness, just that he know. I wrote that I still loved him, that every day without him weighed heavy, and that I understood his silence. But I never sent them. I folded each letter carefully and placed it in a box, in the bottom of a drawer I no longer opened. It was my silent punishment, my need to speak, without the right to be heard. The kids grew. They knew something had broken, but they didn't ask questions. Emma grew quickly. Her first words, her first steps. I noted them, filmed them, to keep them, to one day show her. One day she'd ask, and I'd have to answer. Not the whole truth, but enough to help her understand. I prepared for that conversation, with fear in my gut, because the older she grew, the more her face resembled Lyon's. One Sunday, while grocery shopping, I saw him. Lyon. He'd aged a bit, but his eyes were the same. When he saw me, he froze. "Is that her?" he asked, looking at Emma. I didn't answer. I just held my daughter tighter and tried to walk away, but he followed me down the aisle. "Is she my daughter, Alina?" "No. She has no father, Lyon." "Are you erasing me?" "I'm protecting her." He stood there, silent, then handed me a card. "If one day she wants to know me, you'll know where to find me." And he left, just like that. I stood there, heart pounding, palms sweaty. Emma looked up at me, confused. That night, I placed the card in the same box as the letters. Maybe one day, she'd open it. But not now. Today, she was still too innocent, too pure to understand adult mistakes. And me? I still wasn't ready to face all the consequences. One day, while picking up my kids from Julian's, he asked me to stay a few minutes. It was the first time in months. He'd spoken to me normally. We sat in his living room. He stared at me for a long time, then said, "Can I see her?" It took me a moment to understand. "Emma?" He nodded. "I know she's not mine, but she's part of you. And I once loved that woman, enough to want to know a piece of her." I didn't know what to say. He added, "I haven't forgiven you, Alina, but I don't want to live in anger anymore." I burst into tears. I wasn't looking for redemption, but I didn't expect this gesture either. The next week, I introduced Emma to him. She looked at him curiously, and he smiled at her, like an uncle, a friend, a witness to the past. Maybe it was the beginning of a fragile peace, but for me, it meant everything. With time, I learned to live with my mistakes. I don't deny them. I carry them, like an invisible scar, but still painful. Emma grew up with love, from her half-brothers, from me, and sometimes, even a little from Julian. He never acted like a father, but he showed up now and then. At Christmas, on her birthday, and that was enough for her. I learned that forgiveness can't be asked for. It has to be earned, and sometimes it never comes. But life goes on, and I kept rebuilding. Not like before, not on the same foundations, but more honestly, I never looked for love again. I didn't have the strength. I needed to find myself first, to repair myself. Emma gave me that strength. She gave me purpose, a role, a reason. And one day, when she asks all the questions, I will tell her the truth, not to justify myself, but so she knows, because hiding the truth is another form of betrayal. And I never want to betray anyone again. Today, Emma is 6. She's bright, joyful, curious about the world. She looks a bit like me, and sometimes she reminds me of Lyon. She knows she was an unexpected baby, but not the whole story yet. I'm writing it all for her, in a notebook I keep safe. One day, when she's ready, she'll read it and decide for herself if she wants to meet the man who fathered her, or continue life with those who already love her. Julian got remarried. I heard through the kids. I'm truly happy for him. He deserves it. As for me, I'm still alone. But it's no longer a void. It's peace. I don't want to go back, nor erase my mistakes. They've shaped me. Today, I smile more often. Sometimes I even laugh. And above all, I'm no longer ashamed. Because despite it all, I knew how to love. I knew how to apologize. And I knew how to change. And my daughter, she's not the proof of my betrayal. She is the proof that even in the worst of mistakes, something beautiful can be born.